Well, hi again, and you can see we have another visit from Cleo, who's the muse of history. She's here to make sure we keep in line with the things we're doing in this class. But she hates to just stick around. She's got lots of other places to go, lots of other classes to visit. So she'll say goodbye. So goodbye, bye, bye. Okay, there you go. Ugh. All right. So here we are. Winding down, it looks like. We're into week 12 this week. Last week, if you remember, we dealt with the nearly 100-year period, or I guess maybe it's a little over 100 years, between the rise of the Emperor Augustus, the establishment of the new system of government, and the period of the Julio-Claudian emperors, the emperors who were related in one way or another to Augustus, ending with the suicide of Nero and the so-called Year of the Four Emperors between AD 68 and 69. And this week we're going to be focusing on two connected but somewhat different issues. First is a continuation of our examination of the political and military history of the empire from 69 AD down to about AD 180. And this period can be divided into two sections, you might say. The period of the Flavian emperors, emperors who were all related to Vespasian in the sense that he himself was emperor, and then his two sons, Titus and Domitian, followed him to the throne, and they remained in power until AD 96 with the assassination of the emperor Domitian, who had become somewhat popular in his later years. And then we enter into a period of political tranquility, one might say, the period of the so-called five good emperors. This is a period in which the senators who had been opposed to the whole idea of having an emperor, opposed to the idea of the end of the republic, in which they had basically run things as an oligarchy, in fact, and the replacement of that by one-man rule of the emperors. That sort of disagreement on the part of the opposition, on the part of the senators, had waned, not just because time had passed, but also because many of the senators and the senatorial families had become marginalized, either because the emperors simply overlooked them and chose new administrators and politicians from among the equestrian class and indeed from Roman citizens throughout the empire. And also because some of the senators had indeed revolted against the emperors, and those revolts were never successful, and some of the senatorial families were essentially wiped out as a result of persecution, I guess you could say, or prosecution by the state, that is by the emperor and his administrators, who would put a stop to all that. So, on the one hand, the end of this senatorial opposition was one of the reasons why there was a good deal of political peace. The other reason was because one of the things that the senatorial opposition had called for was the end of rule by emperors who were related by blood, in which a son would succeed the father or something of that sort. And the emperors from 96 onward were cognizant of that, and they, instead of choosing their own sons to succeed them, it was fortunate that, I suppose, none of them, in fact, had sons who could succeed them. But instead of choosing someone from their own family, they decided to select someone, an individual who they felt was prominent, old enough, experienced enough to be able to handle the many tasks that lay in the hands and in the responsibility of the emperor. And so, toward the end of their lives, each emperor selected a successor, and in every case, that successor was successful, and there was no problem in the transition from one reign to another, down to the end of this period in AD 180. And this was also a period marked by significant military peace as well. This is not because there were no wars fought at all, but those wars were fought largely on the frontiers of the empire or even outside the empire. And as a result, the citizens of the empire, now at least 100 million strong, were hardly bothered by warfare. And the army had become professionalized. And so ordinary citizens didn't normally have to serve in the army. And so this was a period of significant peace and prosperity as far as most citizens of the empire were concerned. So that's one of the topics we'll be looking at this week. The other is something quite a bit different. We'll be looking broadly at the culture of Rome from the days of the late Republic up to the middle or latter part of the 2nd century AD. And we'll be looking at some poetry, some of it quite serious, some of it political in nature, some of it humorous, some of it concerned with aspects of personal life, particularly romance and relations between men and women, and occasionally between men and men and women and women. We'll try to step back and understand the very significant accomplishments of the Romans in this period of peace and significant success from every standpoint. This is a period that many historians would regard as the high point of ancient history, the period in which the political system and the cultural systems were at their best, in which individuals had significant freedoms, and in which government and military institutions worked well and served the interests of their people in ways that were really hardly matched. Down to modern times, one might argue. And we'll see such things, for example, as Marcus Aurelius, a remarkable emperor, a remarkable military man, but also a philosopher in his own right. He was a Stoic philosopher, and we'll be reading part of one of his works, and you'll be able to see how he talked about such things as the duty of humans to help their fellow men, how he felt how those in power had a responsibility to help those who were less fortunate than themselves, and how philosophy and the state and ideas in general were meant to improve the lot of humans in this life. So we'll be looking at those aspects of things as well as we sort of take a pause as we rush through the centuries of the Roman Empire. So that's gives you some idea of what the week has in store, and looking forward, as always, to talking with you and continuing our adventure in the world of antiquity. So we'll be in touch. Bye.